With the recent launch of Omnisphere 3, one of the biggest upgrades was definitely the new effects rack, and Spectrasonics really put a lot of work into this, making the effects even available as an independent rack plugin. In today's video, I'm going to show you exactly how the Omnisphere effect rack works. I'm going to give you a little bit of a preset demo to show you what it's capable of, and then we're also going to discuss some of my favorite effects units that I find are the most usable and that I enjoy the most. At the end, I'm gonna also leave some feedback and give a little bit of a review of whether or not I think this is good and what could be improved. So, with that being said, let's jump into it. Now, the Omnisphere effects rack itself is pretty self-explanatory. You can choose from 93 different effects units and combine up to 4 of them in one single instance of the rack. Now, these range from reverbs to delays to analog model compressors, overdrive plugins, creative plugins. There's really a bunch of different modules in there. To add a module, simply click this little icon up here. Each model has its own set of controls, which we're going to take a look at later in the video. For now, you just need to know that you can deactivate it by clicking this and change the dry wet value with this slider down here. Now, you can change the order of any of these effects simply by clicking these 3 bars and dragging the effect up and down. You can also adjust the input and output volume as well as the global dry wet max. Now, at the bottom of the rack, you can save and load any custom presets, so you can either design your own and save them, or also there's a bunch of different factory presets included, which we're going to take a look at in the next section. With the Omnisphere effect rack, you get a surprising amount of factory presets. So I've just loaded up this piano, and I'm just going to show you some of my favorite presets from the factory presets. So this is what it sounds like dry. And now let's just start with some reverbs. Now for this one, I'm just gonna drag down the global dry wet a little bit, so we also get some of that, piano sound. And then this last one is probably one of my favorite ones. I mean, that ambience just sounds super crazy. Now there's also a bunch of great delay sounds in here, so this one is super dope, just using the same effect 4 times. I mean, that just sounds magic. And the thing is, I really liked how good the actual sound quality is. Like, most of these effects just sound super natural themselves. Now these are just some of the reverbs and delays. There's so many good sounding presets in here, and like the combinations obviously with 93 different units are probably endless. So yeah, I'm just gonna show you some of my favorite presets from the other categories, but there's a bunch of stuff in here. Completely different vibe with this one. This one sounds almost like it's played from a mellotron. Super dope as well. Now, as you can see down here, you can also choose presets for guitars, for bass, for drums, and like even all the different kind of drums that you have. Vocals, there's even some mastering presets in here. It is really packed when it comes to good sounding presets. Now, while using presets is dope and can get you there 99% of the time, Making your own presets and your own sounds can really turn up the satisfaction by a bunch. So in this section I'm going to show you 5 of my favorite units from the Omnisphere FX rack in detail, explain everything you need to know about them so you can get started right away. Now again, we're starting with reverb, and probably the most sophisticated reverb I've ever seen in such a small form factor. So this is the Super Verb, and by default it sounds something like this. If I drag down and mix a little bit, you can change the decay, basically how long the reverb is actually going to sound, so that's going to be really long. And you can also turn up the source knob, that basically adds a little bit of frequency modulation to this. I'm not really sure what it's doing like internally, but I'm guessing reverb is just not as like stale and as direct with this. Then right here in the center you have the reverb type. This is going to change drastically how this reverb is sounding. So for example, if I select a shimmer preset, you instantly get all these grains and completely different sounds to what we had before. Sounds super dope as well. Now besides this, you can also apply low and high cut with this filter, and when we tap down here to this more section, we get to the second page of the effect. So right here we can set up a pre-delay. We can also sync this to the DAW tempo, which can create almost like a delay type effect. Just like this. And then we can also decide if we want to boost or decrease the mids, so we can, take out the low mids or the high mids on the reverb. And the last really cool feature on here is this duck effect. So if we select a reverb that has a really long tail, sound like this, we can even increase the decay. So this is really long, and if we start playing a bunch of notes, they're gonna overlap and you won't be able to clearly hear any of the individual notes. And by increasing this duck right here, basically the signal of the reverb is going to be sidechained to any incoming signal, which essentially means that every time you play a note, the reverb is getting a little bit quieter in the background, so you can hear the melody clearly, but once that note gets a little bit quieter, the reverb is coming up again. And this is super dope if you want to have really big reverbs without mashing everything together. Yeah, probably one of my favorite reverbs I've ever used. Now next up we have the Swiss Army delay, which is again a pretty standard delay and what you're gonna use with this 99% of the time. So this is what it sounds like. You can set up your timing left and right, even milliseconds, or if you activate the sync, you can also sync it to your DAW tempo again. This feedback switch right here allows you to take back how many repetitions there are. So if I have this really low, there's not a lot going on, but if I boost it up really high like this, this is going to go on forever. So I'm just gonna drag it back down, and then also I'm gonna make the delay a little bit faster. Now what I really like about this one is that we can have it sound really clean and really digital if we take down these parameters, so no dampening at all and also no drift. Just sounds real clean. And then we can also make it sound analog, so if I apply this drift, you can hear how that delay sound is going slightly out of tune every time. This is really extreme, but you get the point. And then also with this damping, what we can make is make the delay sound a little bit more damp, so less high frequencies. And this is really dope to give it a little bit more natural feel and make it sound like it's really a tab echo. Again, we also have a second page. On here we have some pretty similar stuff to what we had before, so we have both low and a high cut if we want to shape the sound of the delay further. And what's really interesting about this, and again plays into that vintage kind of feeling, is the ability to add any kind of noise to this. So if I drag this value up a little bit, maybe a little bit more, you're gonna start to hear some noise in the background. We also have access to 3 different kind of noise, so we have either clean, warm, and then also tape, if we really want to go into that tape echo kind of sound. Super dope way to just add a little bit kind of vintage feel. Again, we have the mode selector right here, so we can either link both to the left and right speaker, or we can also choose to have it in dual mode, so we can have a different kind of time signature on both sides. Super cool stereo effect. Or what we can also do is we can go to left and right, and this is going to give it a kind of ping pong delay effect where the audio is bouncing from the left to the right speaker. Not really sure why this control isn't on the front page, so we always have to, you know, go back and forth if we want to adjust the timing, but anyways, that's what it is. And we also have access to this duck feature right here that we already saw on the reverb. Again, just really cool if you want to have really big kind of delays to still make your melody pronounced through that. Now speaking of vintage feeling, we also have the Analog Studio tape plus console effect. So this is both a tape machine and a console at the same time. We can switch back and forth between this, again using this little icon down here. And basically the tape machine is what you would expect from that. You can just add some saturation. You can also add some wobble and flutter. So this is typically what you would hear if you run your stuff through a real tape machine. There's just gonna be some slight imperfections on the tape that's gonna make it, you know, sound like a little bit wobbly. Hear that? And then also the flutter is basically the same thing, just volume. Yeah, it's just something to emulate that vintage feel. Also, you can select a different kinds of tape speeds, which is something I haven't really seen on any other plugins like this before. So basically, the higher the tape speed, the cleaner the sound's going to be. So if I set this to 30, it should sound a little bit more clean than what we had right now. And then if I decrease it to 7.5, there are gonna be some more artifacts in that. Same goes for this overbias setting, so deactivating this is gonna make it a little bit dirtier. Yeah, but these differences are really minute, at least to my ears. Now, on the other side, we have access to the tape console, so we can select the input volume, which is not really the actual input volume. It's not going to change the volume at all, actually. It's more of like a dry wet knob of how much of that sound from that mixing console we're actually getting into our sound. And then right here, we can choose from 3 different mixing consoles: the S4000, the N80, and the T88. To me at least, the N80 sounds the best. Again, really minute differences in my opinion, but it definitely makes a difference. This one just sounds really warm. Then we can also activate a mic preamp emulation. And one of my favorite features is this tolerances button. That's just going to emulate these analog kind of imperfections, again, that you would have on big old mixing consoles, where like the electronics would heat up and change the sound slightly. Yeah, and then of course we also have the output volume again. Now this effect is less drastic than the other ones. It doesn't really shape your sound all that much, but it's just great to add as the last effect in your effects rack to, you know, give it that vintage feeling, that warm feeling from like real analog gear that you would typically find in an old recording studio. Now last but not least, I also want to talk about 2 of my favorite creative effects. So first of all, we have the half speeder, and this not only sounds like it's named similar to the original half time, it is actually pretty similar. So right here, if I drag the mix knob all the way up, basically this unit works by resampling any incoming audio and pitching it up by a full octave. And you can change some of these parameters, so I can change the capture, like how long I want it to be, and basically the lower it goes, the more clearly it's going to sound. Versus if I now turn it up to 1 bar. really gets crazy with the rhythm. Then you can also, you know, apply a little bit of saturation. Actually sounds pretty good. Let me just get this down to like quad again. You can also apply low cut, so usually with this kind of effect there's going to be a lot of low frequencies introduced because it's, you know, essentially 1 octave lower than the original audio. So it might make sense to cut that a little bit. You also have access to a high cut, and the last really interesting thing right here is the song position button that I haven't seen on any kind of halftime effect so far. So basically, as long as this is enabled, this unit works like the typical halftime that you would find with, you know, the original one. Meaning that the resampling is actually synced to your DAW tempo again. So basically every time there's a new bar, this is just going to resample any incoming audio and play it back at half the speed. So I can't really demo it that good, but basically the other option is way better for playing live. So if I disable this, it's going to start a new sample and, you know, resample it, pitch it down every time I play a new chord. So let's say I play something like this. As long as I hold some of these notes down, it's going to count it as a legato, and it's not going to start a new resample every time. But once I let go of all of the notes and start playing something new, it's going to be right there again. And this is great for live playing, because if you've ever tried working with halftime while playing on the keys, it typically doesn't work that well. Just a really cool effect, also not only to process your melody directly, but just to take, for example, a delay sound and flip this through the half speeder in order to give it a way more interesting sound than on its own. Alright, now this is the last effect that we're going to tackle today, and this is pretty similar to the half speeder actually, in the sense that it also records your audio, and then instead of pitching it down a whole octave, what this does is playing it backwards, literally. So you get some kind of, you know, reverse sound. If I drag back the dry wet mix a little bit, you can hear what it does, really. Again, we have the saturation, we have the low and the high cut, we have the time signatures, so if we want to have it a little bit faster, we can do that as well. Right here, you have to see that you don't have too many kind of clicky sounds coming through, because if you use it with a sound like a piano, it typically will, you know, just introduce a little bit of artifacts. Right there, you can hear them. Then we also have the song position. Again, for playing live, I would suggest using this setting off. And we also have this overlap feature. So basically, this allows some of the reverse audio to bleed into the next section. So instead of the audio just, you know, cutting off as soon as you press the next note, it's actually going to carry over and going to make for more natural sound with a little bit more ambience. Now, in case I haven't looked at the module that you was looking for, I'd highly suggest you checking out the Omnisphere website, where they have a digital manual for complete Omnisphere and also the Omnisphere effects. And on there you're gonna get a detailed description of every single effect, of every single knob that everything is doing. And that's just really useful if you want to get a deeper understanding of how this stuff works actually. Overall, I think the remodeling of the Omnisphere effects went really good. I love that they're available standalone as the effects rack, and man, we've literally just touched on 5 of the 93 different effects that are available to you, and all of them, all 93, sound really great. That being said, there's still some room for improvement. So, first of all, I would love to see the Omnisphere effect rack being available as a standalone purchase. Now, I get that they wanted to push the sales of Omnisphere 3 as well as the upgrades, and if you just upgrade to Omnisphere 3 for 200 bucks, these effects were worth it alone already, at least in my opinion. That said, I think not everyone wants or can afford Omnisphere 3, so to the people that are just interested in the effects, it would be great if there was a standalone purchase for this available. Now, second of all, right now the UI of the Omnisphere effect rack is pretty much taken straight out of Omnisphere 3, which Don't get me wrong, it's great if you're used to that and if you use Omnisphere, but there are still some, inconveniences. Tell me, why are the rack presets at the bottom of the VST instead of the top, like with every other one? Also, why do I have to click this really tiny arrow in order to select a new effects unit, instead of using that whole area that's available to me? Also, I just don't understand why I can select individual presets for the rack unit on the left, but if I want to click through them like one by one, I'll have to do it on the complete opposite side of the VST. Like, that just doesn't make any sense. Third of all, and I guess this is not that big of a deal, but I still believe that the UI needs an upgrade as well. Like, this doesn't look like it's been released by one of the biggest plugin developers in the world in 2025. It just looks old, and the menus are ugly, and it doesn't feel premium. At least not to me. Now, luckily, all of my criticism or feedback right here is really just about the look and feel of the plugin, rather than the actual sound quality. Because again, that is great. Like, the sound of this is really good, and the combinations that you can get out of this is amazing. So if you're thinking about upgrading to Omnisphere 3 to get this, I would say, yeah. If you're just going to buy Omnisphere 3 to get this effects rack, I don't think that's going to be worth it. Yeah, the effects are good, but paying $500 for this? Probably not. At least not if you don't also could use Omnisphere 3 itself. Now, if you have any questions about this, please let me know in the comments and I'm gonna help you. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. See you in the next one. Bye.